So yeah, look, thank you very much for joining us. What we'd like to chat about really is talk to you about Druva, the direction we're taking, talk about some of the changes and challenges in the data protection industry and some of the great opportunities, and how Druva is really taking advantage of those opportunities to change data protection. And to start off with, really, as we're seeing changes in the market and really changes in industry in general, driven by public cloud. So we're seeing this a lot across all of our customers and in industries in general. There's a number of challenges. Firstly, customers want to be able to build things faster. So public cloud is driving this need to get to market faster, to beat competition. The idea of very quick turnarounds where you don't need to provision hardware, you can build products, try them out, get MVPs in front of customers as quickly as possible. So the asks on companies have increased greatly because of public cloud. This pay-for-use model, this utility-based model that we've seen in electricity as an example for a long time, where you pay for what you need. You don't need to provision it in advance. You don't need to worry about refresh cycles for hardware, budgeting capital expenditure for 3 years. It's a completely different model, and it changes the approach that companies take to how they build and develop and sell products. A term global, which is apparently some mixture of global and local, but really what it means is the ability for companies to have a global presence, but not need, in terms of what they deliver, but in a very local and affordable way. And cloud computing providers, particularly public cloud providers, are providing that. You can start a product, deploy it to any region globally with any major cloud provider, and you have a global presence. And then finally, with employment the way it is, a company's most valuable resource is their talent. And they want to have that talent working on what's driving the business forward, not on what are foundational pieces that aren't helping progress the business. So having great talent that is spending their time on foundational workloads is not something that is of benefit to companies. They want to develop new products and utilize the talent in the best possible way. So public cloud is helping drive that and helping push that forward. And I suppose from my own perspective, I've come from a financial services background, and working in financial services, I worked for a US company in insurance that prided itself on being prudent. Its take was it was going to outlast all of the competition just by being slower than everybody else and by being very methodical. And that's changed. And the example I use where I've seen that change is in about 2004 when I worked there. They had a mainframe system that was consuming huge amounts of data, but it was incredibly expensive to run and it was very slow. And in my bright-eyed enthusiasm, I thought, why not take some commodity hardware, use HDFS and Hadoop, and turn this into a very cheap system to run, but would be hugely scalable. And we managed to run an example of that system where what was taking 24 hours to do a data cleansing job on a mainframe was taking 6 to 7 minutes with commodity hardware that was actually being thrown out by the IT department. So I went to the IT department then with this use case and said, this $40 million a year system, we've done a great job of showing what we can do with new technology. Can we have 300 terabytes? And they laughed with me out of the building because they were charging $30 per gig to provision storage and manage it internally. So just that thinking wasn't there. The opportunity for the likes of provisioning 300 terabytes of storage now on a public cloud provider is nothing. And that change in mentality is opening up a huge amount of opportunities for companies. So, with that, we have this idea that data is the new oil. Data has a huge amount of value, but it's increasing at an incredible rate. So some of the stats we'd see is that customers' data is increasing at twice the rate in the last 24 months. So they're doubling their data every 2 months. Every 24 months, excuse me. There's a motion towards the cloud in a very advanced way. So by 2022, the expectation is 60% of all workloads will be in the cloud or born in the cloud. And finally, a very worrying statistic that 76% of all enterprises in the last year have had some critical data loss or have had regulatory challenges like GDPR and so on. So, what we're seeing here is that data is increasing, which is increasing cost. And with that increase in data footprint, there's also greater risk. And when you see some of these risks actually playing out in industry, we have the likes of Norsk Hydro, who are an aluminium producer. hackers got into the system. They spent a few weeks analysing the system to really understand it. They were very methodical. And one day the CEO or the CTO got a note saying, we've encrypted all of your data. It's military grade encryption. You can get nothing back without using our decoder. That's it. And the company actually took the step of not paying the hackers. They decided they wanted to take an approach where they would never give in to this, and they've started to rebuild themselves. But immediately, yes?
You give some numbers. What are the sources of it?
The sources, yes. So we do have the sources here. I think this is particularly from data center knowledge. So we can provide the source data.
We want to verify that.
We can share the sources with you too.
Yes, yeah, we have the source data in the notes here, absolutely. And this one is quite a public one, where the cost for Norsk Hydro is now at £45 million because they've decided to not give in to the hackers. But the effect on their business has been huge, and the effect on their ability to continue business. They had 22,000 people that effectively went back to pen and paper, and it's a slow process for them. But that's increasing cost over time. Delta Airlines as well had a similar issue, where 2,000 flights were grounded because of a data center issue from outdated hardware. And again, the reputational impact is huge for them as well. So the challenge that we see with customers is, as data increases, is across so many more sources. So whether it's endpoints, whether it's cloud workloads, whether it's Office 365, Salesforce, they're adding so many applications into enterprises that it's getting harder and harder to manage. And with each of those, they get these siloed applications then to manage them, whether it's from a compliance perspective, a governance perspective, archival. So you get these silos of data and then these silos of applications that work on just particular pieces of that data. So that increases the costs, increases the footprint, and therefore increases the risk. So Druva is basically solving this problem for customers. And it really is, it's data protection for the cloud era. So what we mean by that is we're taking a cloud-centric approach to how we solve data protection needs for customers, and doing that in a 100% SaaS way, where it's 100% SaaS, zero infrastructure for customers to set up, and a 50% cost saving for customers. And that cloud messaging is something that you'll see everywhere to do with Druva now. That's something that we're really are pushing globally. It's our message. This is really what we're all about. That's data protection for the cloud era. Sorry, the slides are a bit slow moving on. Yes?
Do you have a possibility to choose the different regions and add volumes?
Sorry, is that to choose different
regions?
Oh, sorry, yes, excuse, absolutely. So yes, Martin, I'll let you, do you want to jump in here? But yes, you can.
Yeah, sure. So I'll stand up so that you can hear me properly. So we're natively born within Amazon Web Services, and that's who powers our solution. We're currently residing in, I think, 18 different storage regions, and any organisation that takes on any of our services can choose either one or multiple storage regions where they can locate their data dependent on the data.
Show that the treatment and the storage is legit.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And it's a great question. That's really important for our customers, particularly, as we mentioned, the likes of GDPR. There's a new California law for data protection that's coming in. So for customers to understand exactly where their data is at all times is incredibly important. So, just kind of continuing the theme of this data protection for the cloud era, the Druva SaaS approach, where it's 100% SaaS, taking data from all of your sources, whether it is your laptops, your endpoints, your servers in your data center, perhaps it's your Office 365 or G Suite or Salesforce data, taking all of that, managing it with Druva's SaaS platform, and then giving you a suite of tools on top of that. So you have your backup and disaster recovery, your standard data protection, but you also get governance on top of that. So you get your compliance, your archival, your e-discovery. And then finally, data intelligence. So actually getting some value back from that data. So I think in general, secondary data is seen as a liability for a business, and it's something that companies just continually want to drive the cost of down, but don't necessarily. But don't necessarily get any value from that. So we want to help turn that secondary data into an asset that can be used by a company. So in terms of Druva then as a company, we have over 4,000 enterprise customers worldwide. You can see some of the names here like PwC, GameStop, Marriott, We've like the likes of NASA, the US Air Force. We'll get into some of those. Yes.
Can you split that number in small, medium, and large
I
organizations?
don't have the figures off. Hunter, do you have?
Yeah, the majority of that we're counting as large enterprise, so we're 1,000 employees and above. We've got a lot of smaller ones as well, but that is what we're going by.
So most of them are
Enterprise.
large, so more than 1,000 employees.
Yeah, depending on the segmentation, but mid-market to enterprise is what's considered.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think you can see some of the names there that are quite well known. We're built entirely on Amazon, and we're really using the size and scale of Amazon to provide that global scalability to customers. So we talk about having infinite scale. That any customer can put any amount of data with us, and using the size and scale that Amazon have, it's not something that customers need to worry about. That ability is there for them to be managed.
Are there any plans on extending to Google or Microsoft?
No, so I mean, I don't know if you've anything to add here, but really, we're 100% Amazon native. We're one of Amazon's top 3 partners, and we are one of and from a storage perspective and from an ISV perspective as well. And while we can back up data from the likes of Google and Azure into Druva's platform, the services are built entirely and 100% on Amazon.
Sorry, could I just clarify that? You're going to be able to back up applications running on Google and Azure?
Yes, in the same way that there are VMs like running.
You will be able to?
No, you can. So currently with the Phoenix product, you can use Phoenix to back up VMs anywhere, whether they're in your data center, VMC Cloud, or running in the likes of with an agent running in Google or Azure.
So, sorry, just to be clear, so you can pick up the content of a VM, but it's not the entire ecosystem. I mean, if I have a database as a service, can you back up these kind of services from Google and Microsoft?
So you are correct. We can attack data within machines where we don't have access at a host level, but where we have access at a host level, either VMC, VM, or Hyper-V, we can act at a host level there. But for any customers that are using Azure, we would install an agent within the machines that they spun up because we don't have that high host level access.
So that raises another question. If you don't have, so if you're native to AWS, everything that I have on Google and Microsoft, if you don't have an endpoint there, I am going to pay egress fees for everything.
No, so Druva manage the egress fees as part of the service that it's offering. So we're taking control of that as part of what is offered with the platform.
No, yes, but I install your agent on a Microsoft service, VM, or whatever. The moment that I generate traffic to a service that is external to Microsoft, I'm going to pay. And because I do not have, millions or billions of VMs on Microsoft, I don't have a special contract, so at the end of the month I will see a huge bill for all my backups.
Sure, and yes, to a degree there is an element of data that would need to come out if we are protecting it outside of that environment. We do block level deduplication at source, so we're always transmitting the smallest amount of data that's needed to be able to protect that data. And we are doing incremental forever on those backups. So the ultimate amount of data that needs to transmit between the service, whatever it is that we're protecting, and our cloud is always going to be the minimal it can be. But obviously, if you are looking at backing up a cloud service, then there is going to be an element of data that does need to egress out of that to come to us.
Yeah, that's so my question is because, Microsoft is actually growing much more than Amazon at the moment. So the last numbers said that Microsoft is growing 76% year on year, while AWS only 40% year on year, which is okay. Microsoft is smaller, but over time this will become a problem. I mean, if I start to use more Microsoft than Google, and also Google is very aggressive now, so I will end up paying a lot for your service if you continue with this AWS only kind of strategy for the backend. Sure,
it's a good question. I think the primary focus, I suppose, of the the suite that we have really is for companies who have a significant data center presence. So we can manage your VMs in Azure or GCP, but really it's the data center and VMC cloud that's where it really pays off. So that would be the majority of the workloads would be in data centers at the moment that we're managing with our Phoenix product.
Sorry, say it again.
Sorry, so the majority of workloads that we manage and the primary focus is for companies with data centers that want to move their data protection to the cloud. So it's the focus is more data center customers as opposed to Azure and GCP customers.
Okay. That means that you need a strategy moving forward if those customers start to adopt more cloud to be able to not have the issues that Enrico's just talked about.
Yeah, no, and it's a very good point. So I suppose what we're seeing at the moment is, in terms of a multi-cloud strategy that companies have, there's very much the idea that companies want to have a multi-cloud strategy, but what we see is the majority have a particular cloud that they focus on. And for our customers that are in the data center and want to move to a data protection solution in the cloud, we're managing everything for them. So for them, they're moving away from having to manage hardware in the data center, manage that storage themselves, where we manage all that for them with the SaaS solution. So, it is something that might come up in years to come, but really the focus now is absolutely data center customers who want to not have to worry about managing their own backup and data protection themselves.
Okay, so it begs a question with the money you've just raised. Does that mean you're looking at expanding your reach into enterprises which currently have traditional infrastructure and taking that out? Or are you looking to expand and develop solutions that are going to develop more of a multi-cloud type approach for customers who might be looking to move into that environment?
So really, it's absolutely the data center customers who have traditional solutions in place by providing something where you don't need to have to worry about hardware and you don't need hardware refreshes every 3 years. It's an entirely zero infrastructure based approach where we manage the
but that's the focus of where you think you would go in the next.
Maybe to give some
12 to 18
context, and
months.
it's on some of the other slides, but our strategy moving forward is on the Phoenix product. So our go-to-market strategy, our sales organizations, the marketing you're going to see is really geared towards that message. We're founded on the InSync product, right? But over the past few years, that's where we see as where execs and our product team sees the big opportunity for us, where we have massive differentiation that he'll get to when you go through it. But it is absolutely, we're not going to do a one-size-fit-all, and we're not going after everybody. We're going after some pretty target,
And very much now, I mean, it's almost in hyper growth at the moment, Phoenix, for us. We are selling far more now than we were. It's really growing, and it is really targeting organisations that do have large virtualised environments on-prem at the moment. Remote offices, we're very strong at to give central visibility of many remote offices and ease of control of those. So that's really where we're going now. Yes, the data is being stored in the Druva platform, but as we move forward, obviously the multi-cloud environment and the protection of cloud environments is something that is always heavy on our mind as well.
Okay. Just to add one last question, sorry, I don't want to hold up your presentation, but as a result of what you just said, does that mean there's a sweet spot in terms of customer size which determines where you actually make money?
Yes.
Because I would imagine that initially when you take customers on, you do have a bit of a cost that you have to accommodate for when you first take the customer on. So there must be a sweet spot of volume size and length of time that you retain those customers before you start making money.
And I have a slide at the end that if it was going to come up, we'll go through it.
Okay.
That talks about our go-to-market strategy. But yes, we spent a lot of work evaluating the segments that we're really going to double down on, where the product fits, where we see the market opportunity.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. And I think the point about the data under management, as Martin mentioned about global deduplication, that's deduped data just for the Phoenix and InSync products. So we're in roughly probably around 700 petabytes of source data, and then when we take what we manage in the likes of our Amazon workload tool, it brings it up to nearly 1 exabyte of data that we have under management in total with the various Druva products. So a substantial amount of data for some very large customers. And to Martin's point, the likes of Robo offices is a great example where they don't need to install hardware in each office. They get global deduplication and nothing to manage. When the companies have 200 or 300 offices, the likes of the Druva solution as a 100% SaaS is absolutely ideal for them. One of the trends that I think is seen in cloud storage is because cloud companies and the scale they're growing at are able to drive down the cost of cloud storage significantly. So, recently the cost of cloud storage has dipped below on-premise storage, again because the likes of Amazon and Google and Azure are adding such huge weight and such economies to scale of what they're doing that cloud storage is getting cheaper and cheaper. So we see the likes of Deep Archive offering a terabyte of data for $1 per month. So the cost of cloud storage is dropping dramatically, and the trend is that will continue as much as possible. So when we talk about SaaS and why SaaS approach is such a great approach, we can see in industries over the last number of years, particularly if we take Salesforce as an example. Salesforce didn't invent a CRM. Siebel was there beforehand, SAP, so you had great products, but you had to install and maintain those products. And I'm not too sure if you remember, but Salesforce, their original tagline was zero software. They operated on the basis that it was a service that you didn't need to install and maintain, but you got all the benefits from. And when people realized that value, that value proposition really took off. And we can see it across all of these industries, whether it's the likes of Box for storage, ServiceNow or Workday for HR systems. As they moved to a SaaS-based model, the benefits were absolutely huge, and they all took off and became great success stories. In the data protection space, we have the likes of Veritas, Commvault and VMC, who had the traditional hardware approach in the data center. And now Druva is the only company providing a SaaS-based approach to data management where you don't need that installation of hardware to get the benefits of a great data protection platform. And just getting into some of those advantages as we talked about, we're talking about 50% cost savings because of not having to install and maintain hardware, not have to have people. No?
It's already, whatever it's already a model. It means that maybe you can find a TCO in 3 years, but 5 years or 6 years, it's most expensive than another model. It's always the same thing, years past that, it's always the same thing.
So we do have we have validation points we'll send. So you'll see in the coming weeks a analyst validated TCO calculator that does support all of this with our use cases.
Yeah, but it depends on the number of years you put into the TCO model.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
How long you sweat your hardware for?
I had 5 years. I had 5 years in your TCO models, and you're more expensive.
Not necessarily, but yeah.
That's a good point. And again, this is data that's validated across our customers, where we've worked with them to understand, the cost that they had and the savings that they were getting from the Druva platform. So, as Penta had said, we do have an analyst validated TCO calculator to show this. That will be available in the next number of weeks, I think. So we can get through it and send it on to you and talk to that in more detail when that comes out. But we are, our customers are seeing the benefits of not having to install hardware, not having to have that. They are seeing those immediate benefits, and for the likes of a model that you can deploy in 15 or 30 minutes, where you don't need to install hardware, you can install software, start doing backup, start getting global deduplication. You can see immediately the benefits of that, and that's very different from a hardware model where you need to actually order something, wait for a number of weeks, install it, configure it. It's a different model entirely, and the SaaS approach allows us, with the backing of the cloud behind that, allows us to achieve that model. And because of the infrastructure we have to build, the likes of security is so incredibly important that we adhere to the best possible standards that is required. So, the likes of FedRAMP as an example, if anyone has an experience in that, FedRAMP is an incredibly difficult certification to achieve. When you get to the level of working with the US government, the standards they require, it's probably a 2-year process at least to get to that level. So having that level of certification across every area of organisation to make sure we meet the standards required is incredibly important. So security is a hugely important aspect for us, and it's very, very important for our customers as well. And we put a lot of emphasis of that internally. And
That's good. Yes. Good question. You say no hardware, no software, but how many of your customers have to go back and look at their networking and change their networking to increase the amount of bandwidth they've got to public cloud, first of all? Secondly, when you say no software, there must be some type of agent technology being deployed somewhere in order to actually feed that data and store the local global dedupe, otherwise you couldn't do it. So there's an element of that. It's not software that you have to manage in the traditional sense, but there must still be some stuff. It's not like a Salesforce SaaS where you log on to a web portal and then you're done. There is a certain degree of hook into that, isn't there?
That's fair, but do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so yes, we say no software, meaning no backup management software as such to install and maintain. Yes, we do need an agent. We're not completely agentless. We do reduce the amount of that that's needed because we run at a proxy or a host level within virtualized environments. But yes, there is an agent that does need to be installed and configured. Once that is installed on the machines, all upgrades and everything to those machines can be done remotely. So we're saving you having to go back and revisit those boxes. I was at a university yesterday that had a 2.5 week program to go through and upgrade and maintain all of their Veeam appliances that they had throughout the campuses. For that, it would have been a single click on a button and carry on with your daily tasks. That sort of thing is what we're trying to get at. But yes, I suppose.
I'm not trying to be picky.
Looking at the letter of the law, yes, there is some software, but we mean the more traditional approach to software. Okay.
One question that keeps bugging me is around the economics of this, because you're working with Amazon and you're backing up data that's outside of Amazon, and one thing that's definitely an economic issue with Amazon is the cost of data egress from AWS. So how do you account for the vast disparity in costs between backup and restore?
So, yeah, you can take it away.
Yeah. So we provide the service at a fixed cost. Customers that egress data back out of our system, we account for that within the overall cost of our solution. We've been running services for in excess of 8 years now within the cloud, so we have a good understanding of what happens with a typical customer as far as how much data they're going to egress over time and everything else, so we've built that into our cost model. So the customer themselves gets a very predictable approach to utilising the cloud, whereas if you are trying to build it yourself within the cloud, you sort of have to try and guess what you're going to have in the way of egress, but we build that all in, use our experience to help smooth that curve out, so a customer just has a flat fee.
Right. So because you collect all this information from all your customers, we also provide an analytics tool to
Question.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
for your customer. I mean, so can they understand the trends if they are aligned to
Yes. Yeah,
similar customers?
Yeah, I could show a little bit when we get to demo, but the whole real ethos of Druva is we're collecting the data in the first instance from all of the multiple sources. We're storing that data for as long as you need that data to be stored, but we then provide, and this is where we're a little bit unique, extra insight into that secondary copy of data that we've got that provides businesses far more information about that data than they would have if it sat on a tape in a drawer somewhere just in case. So
no,
but
is that an extra service? Do you have to pay for that extra?
we come in levels, tiered levels. The entry level is very much just backup and recovery, but we then have search and we then have the additional analytics elements that can be plugged in. Sorry.
Sorry, but maybe I was not clear. The idea is, okay, I know that you can give me insights on my data, which is very useful, but also I would like to compare my data with others. Not my Word files, but actually how I am growing, the retention of other companies, similar companies, and so on. So just to understand better if I am aligned,
Yes.
with the best practices or something like that.
Sure. So there's kind of two aspects here. One is because of the scale that Druva operates, the question around cost and how we manage that. Because we operate at such a scale, we're able to negotiate better storage costs with Amazon, which helps drive down the costs for customers. So operating at that scale, we can pass the benefits on, and also we get understanding how all the data that's traveling around, how it moves, where it's stored, auto-tiering levels of storage to make it as efficient as possible. So there is storage analytics that are coming in the future, probably in the next maybe 2 or 3 weeks, that will show you your data, to Martin's point, and give you a very good picture as to how your data is stored, what's the most efficient way of doing it.
Change
So you can
rates per machine and so on, but we don't allow you to compare that with other customers because other customers' information is the other customer's information.
No, in the
No,
back end.
yes, but we are not comparing the content. We are comparing, the trends and how the system is utilized, this kind of things. I mean, every vendor that has a cloud analytics tool, like for example HP InfoSight, it's another field, and we are not. But they can give you clear view of where you are going compared to the rest of the world. So if you are growing 1 petabyte month on month, and is it normal? Are the rest of the world doing the same, the thing with a comparable set of virtual machines, for example, or services? Okay, am I doing something wrong?
Sure.
So this kind of questions.
Yeah. So we're not showing that direct example of you're doing this and here's what the industry is doing. We are using all of the intelligence that we gather and using machine learning to help provide you with recommendations that will indirectly be of the benefit of what everyone else is doing as well. So the recommendations you're getting will be based on the trends that other companies are doing as well, but it's not necessarily you're doing this and here's the industry standard, so you should follow that directly. It's more an indirect benefit of the information, not a direct comparison.
And as an example,
it's good feedback. It's certainly something we'll take back to the product teams.
Yeah, maybe it could be helpful to see the demo because it's not really clear what you do.
Okay.
I know that machine learning is always.
Okay, we can take that in more detail at the demo as well. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
2 questions.
Sure.
First, we know that US are extraterritoriality norms and laws, but in this I see just Americans. Norms, background, films, SAC, EPA. Which kind of other European norms do you follow? Second, you made granted SLAs. Mm-hmm. What are the levels of these SLAs? Because if it's under 3.9 after the comma, I think I could better mathematics.
Okay. Do you jump in?
Yeah.
So can I answer that question?
Please do.
It's also, do you give guaranteed RPOs and RTOs, for instance? Because, I mean, having a data protection solution in the cloud is one thing, just shoving the data over, but, at some point there is a case coming where you want it back. And that also comes to the question of when the time elapses that, backups have to be stored like 90 days or 3 months or whatever, 6 months, and this SLA is reached. What then? Is it erased? How so? Does it get into archive? How so? Do I get it back into my data center if need be? How so?
Great question. If I go backwards through those, try and remember them all. I'm getting old and my brain doesn't work as it used to, unfortunately. So from a data management perspective, I guess from the last question that you have, how data moves around within the system, that is all automated. We manage that all for you because we're managing the storage and the data that is stored. Any data that is over 90 days in age automatically gets moved off to cheaper, lower tier storage. It is Glacier, yes indeed. And from you as a customer, the only difference is you still see everything in the same pane of glass, but if you are trying to restore a snapshot that's over 90 days old, you have a 4-hour thawing time to allow that snapshot to be available to you. Okay?
Can you change this setting? Maybe a customer needs to have a faster storage for
Not currently, so 90 days is set and hard-coded for that data move. But we're not the overall cost of our solution isn't based on whereabouts the data is at the back end. Okay? So the only thing different is that 4-hour. Anything that's less than 90 days old is available to you instantly because it's within S3 buckets and you can instantly get that data.
Depending on the bandwidth. Depending on bandwidth.
Potentially on that.
you also restore on a different target, for example.
Yes, and I can show you that in the demonstration as well. So even at a file level from a VM, we can restore to another VM on a different hypervisor as long as there is a proxy running at that host level.
I mean also, for example, on EC2, on AWS, install something.
Right, that comes into other product levels. So we have different products doing different things, which again we can highlight out at that level. So good. I'm trying to get back on the track to the other question as well. Sorry. As far as restore speeds, guaranteed RTOs. It's always difficult because of the elements that are in between. Okay, we do provide several different ways to allow you to get your data back quicker. Again, I can talk about that in the demonstration. We have a concept of a cloud cache, which is localized last 5 days worth of blocks of data to help speed that recovery process. Back one more to your question about how many nines. We follow through with AWS's SLAs. So we provide similar SLAs to AWS, so I believe it's 11 nines on data durability, because we place data in storage regions that are available in multiple availability zones, and we always have at least 3 availability zones for any of the regions that we're providing to. And it's 5 nines on availability.
No, it's really...
Because are you using EC2 instance?
AWS
Okay.
SLAs.
As far as I'm aware, we're within our contracts, it's 5 nines that we're offering you guys on availability of service. Anyway.
You might be replicating it, but it's Amazon's SLAs are pretty weak and they've got target SLAs and guaranteed SLAs, so their target might be to try and get to 5 nines, but they don't guarantee that they get to 5 nines. But you may be doing that additional resiliency within your architecture.
Indeed, yes. Okay.
It means that you are
Yes. And then the first question last, because we like working backwards.
what I'm saying is that guaranteed SLAs that even AWS can provide.
Indeed, and that's where we are there. From a certification perspective, the SOC 2 Type 2 for running cloud service, that's almost a global rather than a specific. I don't believe we have anything specific European-wise on the security front.
Yes.
Yet. Should customers demand, we are always willing to add that functionality in and go through that certification process.
We could follow up with the list of all certifications. They are publicly available, but we can certainly come back with the entire list of certifications that we have. We have a significant amount more than that, and see if there's any particular ones. Is there any particular certifications that are of keen interest to you?
Oh yeah, for example, that you are a third party responsible for data for GDPR and messaging, encryption, and so on. Second, there is also a possibility to have geolocalization very specific in Switzerland, Germany, or something else. Another things, as GDPR, there is a specific regulation in Brazil, in California, which are totally different than the others. If you are, do you follow them, or are you able to manage this kind of certifications? Second, there is by country in Europe. You don't have the same thing. Do you have the double opt-in in Germany? Do you have a...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yes, I think if we follow up with the list of entire certifications that we have for you to give you all the detail exactly as you're looking for. So I suppose just kind of moving on a little bit to the under the hood of what's happening. Some of these questions we have actually covered already to some degree. So we have, as Martin had mentioned earlier, this idea that because we're managing everything for you, so you don't need to worry about software updates. We release, new features and functionality on probably a weekly and bi-weekly basis, and that's something that you don't typically see in data protection. Usually it's months or even years. So releasing updates and features that fast means that your data is constantly getting new features available to get more value from that. We provide global deduplication on your data as well, which is incredibly powerful, particularly for the likes of companies who have remote offices. where they may have a lot of similar content. So that block level global deduplication offers great cost savings for them, and we manage all that for the customer again. So it's not something that you need to be concerned about. It's managed by Druva, and that's where our expertise really is to help provide that value for you.
Can I just ask you a quick question on that?
Yes.
Because if I'm an end customer that's being charged by the amount of data I store, I don't really care about deduplication.
You're charging the deduplication data.
Because it's obviously a cost per volume of data. Are you charging the customer per volume of deduplicated data?
Yes, so we don't charge the source data, it is deduplicated
and,
data.
Is that, when you say global, are you talking about global for that customer or globally?
It's global for that customer.
For that customer.
Every customer's data is effectively independently encrypted and separate.
It would be encrypted against those customers.
Exactly, so it's independent for each customer. Exactly, yeah.
Sorry, I don't think I quite. Sorry,
yes.
I don't think I quite understood that. When you say global deduplication, do you mean that if I have the same set of data as somebody else on your system?
No, so it's entirely separate for customers.
No, so it's globally for an organisation based
I see. Okay.
Based on the target for
exactly. Yeah. No, the customer's data is entirely kept separate.
I thought that would be rather weird if ingenious.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's entirely separate, but it's global for your customer. So particularly for large organisations, that global deduplication represents a very significant saving for them. And to your point, we charge on the deduplicated data, not the source data.
So do I remember well that you have a separate key management for each single customer? So each customer can manage its own keys.
Exactly. So customers manage the keys. We never have actually access to the data itself. It's not something we have access to. The keys are managed by the customers themselves.
But they also reside in the
The keys?
So they are. We use digital envelope encryption. So typically when we're creating an environment for a customer, a key is randomly automatically generated and then immediately re-encrypted and tokenized into 2 tokens. We hold 1/2 of a token, which means that we have no direct access. The customer, in theory, through a combination of SAML or whatever authentication tools they want to protect their side to gain authentication, then bring the 2 keys together. We expose the original encrypting key within volatile memory space for that transaction, and it then disappears in a puff of smoke. So no one actually knows what the key is, the original key is, because it's randomly generated and then re-encrypted and tokenized. But it's a very, very secure manner to make sure that we as a vendor have 0 access to data and preserving that customer's access themselves. Okay? Cheers. Okay.
And the question earlier on about the, I suppose, cost. We do auto-tier data, so figuring out the best place to store the data, and we are introducing a number of features here to help reduce costs for customers on an ongoing basis. And a really big one for us again, and it comes back to the question of us wrapping everything in a solution for you, that you do get that value add on top as well. So it's not just data protection, but now you get governance, e-discovery as an example on top of the data and across all of the data from all these data sources. And that makes the data far more valuable. So when you have your data from your endpoints, but also your data from your servers in your data center, or perhaps running in your cloud, when you can add business intelligence, when you can add auto-discovery or compliance on top of that, then the data becomes more valuable. And if you can start asking questions of that data and using it to drive business value instead of just being secondary storage that's sitting there costing you money, it becomes a very different prospect. So really, looking at the kind of companies that we're working with, everywhere from across, data is not specific to a particular industry. Every industry, every company has different data needs, and what we can see here is that right across the board, from life sciences through to the likes of NASA and the US Air Force, some very large companies managing their entire data protection for endpoints, data centers, and cloud workloads.
But what are at the end of for the choice for those enterprises? What was why did they choose you face to your competitors? Is it always for your security aspect, or I don't know what kind of feature? What is the most important feature that they choose?
I would say the cost saving, that's cost saving where they no longer need to manage and maintain hardware to deliver a data protection platform. It's all done for them, so they can focus their energy and money on things that are driving the business forward and leave the expertise of managing data protection to Druva.
For the cost savings, do you have some numbers to tell us for 5 years? How many cost saving for 5 years, or I don't know how many years you are on the market?
Yeah, so this comes in, as Penta was saying earlier, we've got some total cost of ownership, TCO stuff going through analytics.
It's done. Our sales organization, but to put it out commercially, we wanted to make sure it was really, really validated.
Yes,
that's right.
Not for 1 year or for 1
Absolutely.
yes,
that's right.
For a long period of time.
Absolutely.
That will be available at the end of July publicly.
Okay. And like I said, it is we've gone through a process with analysts to validate it, so you can do exactly that to see what the cost for the company is going to be over a 5-year period, compare it to certain competitors, and predict your data growth and see how that affects the cost of the solution. So, to answer your question about why customers would pick us, I think that's a huge focus. If you can provide, like I said, on average across the customers that we've worked with, 50% TCO saving, that's a huge thing for them. The SaaS platform is another massive advantage because, again, a SaaS platform where they don't need to manage any hardware, they don't need people to configure, to monitor what's going on. There's no hardware refreshes. It's now just it's a different model internally for how they manage data protection. And then finally getting the benefit of getting access to the data, so things like ransomware recovery. So if you have Office 365 data or endpoint data, getting the ability to have ransomware recovery from that if you do face an event like some of the examples we had on the board earlier, or one-click e-discovery or legal holds for your data. Particularly
you are not the only one company that's proposed those features.
It's true, but packaging it all together where we can do this across all of these endpoints and unifying it in one place, and we're the only company doing it from a SaaS perspective. The only one who's managing the data as well. So I think we're leading the space from that perspective for sure. And the likes of these companies, they've gone all in with their entire data protection, with whether it's their endpoints or the data center, and managing it all with Druva.
I think another thing is ease of use generally. We're quite proud, and hopefully you'll see when we demo, that we've made the solution very, very easy to understand, administrate, navigate through. We've spent an awful lot of time on the user experience or the admin experience. Again, I speak to quite a lot of customers in the early stages of discussing Druva and proof of concepting the solution within organisations. And there are a lot of the legacy solutions that come with manuals this big, and those organisations tend to have to hire people that understand the solution to save them having to retrain on staff turnover. With our solution, it's very, very intuitive, and you can be up and running literally within an hour or so with the basic concept and be able to go in and understand what you're doing. So there's a lot of that as well. Ease of use, simplicity, cost savings as a package just makes us a very compelling product.
Most of the time inside the shortlist, phase 2, which companies are you?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sorry, but most of the time when you are inside the shortlist to be chosen, who are the other companies? Your competitors? Most of the time?
Yeah, you probably see the example.
Yeah, certainly. I think it differs depending on the customer we're speaking to and whether it's a greenfield customer, which we don't find that many of in the server base because everyone seems to have a budget for server protection. But yes, we see the likes of Commvault, Veritas quite frequently. As I say, we're not saying we're a direct replacement, and we very rarely go into an organisation and try and replace Commvault out of an organisation. What we say to an organisation is if there are specific workloads that are better suited to a cloud-based approach, then don't invest more in your Commvault and keep your Commvault for the workloads that it's really needed for internally. But take some of what you're doing today and move it to something that is going to be far more cost effective for you. Because let's say, for instance, a file server, backing up a file server from Commvault is going to be a very expensive way of backing up a file server. Maybe a cloud-based approach to that, with deduplication and everything else, is going to help reduce that organisation's costs. So we're not looking to go in and wield an axe to get rid of competition out of these organisations. We're having discussions with them about the sorts of workloads that they've got, what workloads would be better suited to a cloud-first approach, and then helping that customer start in baby steps. Because with us, they're not having to invest in a huge amount of architecture to make it happen. We can turn them on within an hour. They can be backing up their first server within 30 minutes after that. Nothing to be shipped, nothing to be delivered, nothing to be configured. So baby steps.
So you just raised a very interesting point. When you go into customers and you talk about replacing technology they already have, typically backups could be kept for 10 years maybe in some organisations. So do you have any capability of actually ingesting any of the older backups in order to help them reduce their footprint of old technology that's sitting on the floor?
Yeah, it's a very good question. At the moment, no. There are lots of organisations that, or there are some organisations rather than lots, that will be able to take historic legacy and provide a solution that means you don't need to keep on paying that support and maintenance. Yeah?
Martin, you said at the moment, which kind of could imply that at some stage you might.
We're being asked a lot for it, so it comes up in conversations. I can't guarantee, but it is certainly in our long-term roadmap.
Let's take that question from another point of view. Druva has an anti-silo message.
Yes.
And yet you're telling Commvault customers, have another silo.
That's very...
We're saying that if you're wanting to move to the cloud...
I can understand the justification,
yeah. But yes, in an ideal world, everyone would have one product and it would do everything.
There are discussions on the roadmap for things like that.
Sorry?
I said these are all discussions. There's a roadmap that we cannot share at the moment, but there are things that we know that there's opportunities.
We're all friends here.
Yeah. Of course we are.
Customers have asked for it.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of math, maybe I'm wrong, but you mentioned 150 petabytes, your infrastructure as a whole.
Yes.
And 4,000 customers, it means 37 terabyte on average per customer, which is very small, even if it's deduplicated. And if I multiply it by 4 or 5, which is the usual, we're talking about between 120, 150 terabyte per customer. And that doesn't add up with the fact that you're mentioning that you have, a lot of medium to large size customers. I mean, means that you are solving only to the cloud silo point. You are solving just a few of their data protection problem at the moment.
Yeah, so it's a journey for customers. So they start off and they progress through the organization. So if you look at some of these examples here, Pfizer as an example started with 10,000 employees, they're now up to 95,000 employees that are putting data in the cloud with Druva. So there's a progression and a journey with customers, and while the projections are certainly going to grow significantly over the next number of years, we have some customers that will be exceptionally large. But the customers that are with us are consistently growing all of the data that they're putting in the cloud. So for some customers, while it may be smaller now, it's certainly growing significantly over time. So we'd expect that number to really increase very, very fast. Does that answer your question?
Well, actually, it doesn't answer the question which kind of workloads you are protecting. I mean, if we start thinking about your roots, so the mobile data protection, I can totally get it. A few gigabytes for each single phone. They, at the end of the day, there are not many terabytes. But then you started adding, more agents and clients or whatever, or services. But still, I know it's 2-3 years that you have all these clients. They are not growing as fast as it seems from the slides at the very beginning. If you do a little bit of math. So you are still doing a lot of mobile and maybe a little bit of other things.
Yeah, hence the focus on getting our data center in Phoenix. We're going through a massive shift over the past 6 months, and you'll see a lot more of it our entire go-to-market is now built on pushing that message and pushing that product. So yes, to our roots, that's right, but we see that opportunity, and part of the investment, part of the hiring, the sales, and the marketing, everything is being pivoted to push the data center Phoenix message. So we are seeing that grow significantly quarter over quarter. It may not be here in our annual numbers we're showing, but I would expect that to be there next year.
Okay. So just to recap, I mean, some of those examples of those customers who started, the likes of Pfizer, but Live Nation, who have this cloud-first strategy. So, you know, that's a great example of someone who is moving all of their workloads to the cloud. We're managing them, whether it's their endpoints, whether it's their data center workloads, managing all those for them to help reduce costs and give them the functionality they need from a data protection solution, particularly for them, with the likes of e-discovery being a really important use case. So I know we're at the end of what I suppose from a presentation perspective, and Martin is going to jump in with the demo next, but just to really recap on some of the things we talked about for us, that are the key points and the key takeaways is, you know, we are seeing that 50% cost saving for our customers we're working with. And we'll have the TCO calculator out in the next few weeks. That's something that we will bring to you guys. And you know, I think it's we're seeing that, and it's providing great value for our customers. So that the ability to get value from that data, that the secondary data is no longer a liability, that you can turn it into an asset and start using business intelligence on that data. And because of a SaaS-based solution and a self-service model, we can get to a 15-minute start time. So we're working hard to drive down how quickly you can get started with Druva for any of the products and start backing up your data immediately, see the benefits of it right away without having to rely on shipping server, you know, installing it, configuring it, and so on. That it's going to move to a completely self-service model at the start to allow you to really quickly see the value that Druva can bring to data protection. So that's it really. I'm going to hand over to Martin next to crack on with the demo, but thank you for so far.
So 3 main products within our suite, I guess. The best thing. The first one is InSync. We've spoken a little bit about that. That's what our flagship was. Focused on end user related data. So that's laptops, mobile devices, so tablets, phones, expanding into cloud applications. So the likes of Office 365 support, G Suite, Box, and Salesforce.com. Okay. We're not covering that today. If any of you want a recap on that, or you want another session, I'm around over lunch, and if you want me to quickly show you, I can do. Or we're more than happy to have individual sessions with any of you that want a refresher on that to run through that. We are still selling an awful lot of it. But as we've explained today, our focus really now is on the Phoenix side of things. We are growing Phoenix at a far faster pace than we are the InSync solution. The InSync solution is there still, but we're happy to cover that off with you. The Druva Cloud platform that I've just logged into in the first instance here, and I'll stand back every now and again. In fact, let me do it from back here, if I can. Is our log on to all of the products. If a customer has bought whether one or all 3 products, coming into the cloud platform allows them to see information around their entire estate that is protected by Druva. We also have the ability to then delve into specific areas within the InSync product, the Phoenix product, and then the Cloud Ranger product, which is all about the AWS data protection, management of snapshots, server scheduling and such like for organizations that run in AWS as well. The cloud platform also allows customers to go off to helpful videos. We're all about self-help, all about ease of use, as well as learning center access to allow organizations to learn more about the products that we've got. We also, and we mentioned storage regions earlier, we're also able to show a customer whereabouts they have got storages enabled. This is a global-based demonstration solution that has storages dotted around. It's not all of the storages that are available to us, but it gives you an understanding that we're able to see all of those storage areas that have been created for a customer and the state of those, whether they're operational or whether there's any issues within AWS or our service delivering to those solutions. For the purpose of today and time, I'm going to drive into Phoenix because I want to give you a good high-level overview of the Phoenix solution itself. Now, as we say, Phoenix is very much around physical servers, NAS devices, virtualized estates, remote offices, that sort of workload element.
You mentioned agent and proxy. For virtual machine, you are using proxy virtual machine to make agent.
It's proxy virtual machines, which we can deploy and group together, and I'll cover that when I get to.
Physical NAS, are you using agent?
Exactly. So physical. So we use a physical agent that allows connection to NAS. So we're not doing it through NDMP. We're doing a native read of that data to get it in. An agent for Windows and Linux-based machines to target content within. And we class that as physical machines, but those could be machines that are deployed elsewhere. They don't actually have to be physical, it's just the agent that's running within the machine. We have a SQL-aware agent to allow us to do SQL down to transaction logs. We have an Oracle agent that basically uses RMAN to do a dump and sweep style solution, but through a secondary on-prem storage for the local copy that allows us to take the Oracle side. Most Oracle DBAs don't want to use anything or have anyone mess with their databases, and they like RMAN, so that's what we're using there. VMware and Hyper-V are proxies. And within those proxies you can install multiple depending on the load and pull them together, and I can show you briefly on that as well.
You mentioned also AHV.
So Hyper-V, AHV. So AHV is in development at the moment. So we are Nutanix certified already, but that's for for physical machines on that site if they're running AHV, or if someone's still running VMware on a Nutanix box. Obviously we can do everything, and the Nutanix box itself can act as its own cloud cache server, which I mentioned earlier about speedy recoveries. We are working on AHV native support, and we are expecting that out later on this year, I believe. But it's not on a... But it is spoken about, published roadmap. I don't know the exact date that we're actually getting that.
Will that include Nutanix files as well then, Martin?
Sorry?
Will that include the files, Nutanix files?
I do believe so. I don't know, I'm not that clever. I'm certainly not building the solution, but yes, when we come out with the native Nutanix solution, it will do everything that we need to do within it. Okay.
You've talked a lot about backing up VMs. What about containers? Do you integrate with EKS, for example?
Very good question. I'll be honest with you, I do not know. I can find out the answer to that question and I can get back to you with that.
That would be good.
Okay. I know there is an element there. I'm not a VMware expert, I'll be honest with you.
No, I was meaning EKS, the Elastic Container, the Elastic Kubernetes service on that.
Yeah, we don't have support for EKS at the moment, our container service. Is that something that you're seeing a lot of demand for?
Yeah.
EKS in particular, okay. Okay. We'll take it back to the product team. I know it's something that they're investigating, but it's not something we've seen a lot of yet from a data center perspective.
Okay. So I've logged in as a God administrator on this system, so I'm the God within an organisation. That at a very high level I can see that I've got 18 physical servers, 2 SQL servers, 4 Oracle servers. I've got 46 VMware end machines protected, 8 Hyper-V, 7 NAS devices that are being protected, and I've got 9 cloud cache devices enabled within the solution.
Is that devices that you've actually set up, or is it automatically discovering those?
We can set the system up to automatically discover. These are ones that are actually set up and running as protected machines as of today. So for instance, the 70 outside of the 46, there's some VMs that haven't actually been configured. We can automate the whole VMware side to look at tags and so on and so forth to automate the setup. For the demo purposes, we don't have everything set up. For instance, when I go into London, which is my little element of this, I have a VM machine that is acting as a cloud cache server, and I don't particularly want to back that server up because it is my localized cache of data, and I'll just be backing up something that doesn't need to be backed up. Okay? I'm able to see globally how well protected I am. I do apologise for the amount of red on this. I can do nothing but blame my American colleagues on that. When we go into London, although I've got a smaller amount of servers, you should, fingers crossed, see nice green circles in there for the servers that I'm responsible for. And if it's not, I'm going to look very, very silly in about 5 minutes' time. I'll just raise up a little bit here. And just talk a little bit about the bottom. So, out of all of these servers, as an entire system, I've got 4,011 historic snapshots of all of those devices that are available to me to be recovered from, okay, amongst all of those devices. Each device can have different retention, different rules as to what we are and we aren't backing up and so on and so forth, but at this precise moment in time, there's 4,011 snapshots that I could restore from the data that I've got due to the retention policies that have been set. If I look at the original source size of all of these devices that were being protected, they were 6.9 terabytes, so just under 7 terabytes worth of source data when those devices first appeared on the system. Because we're doing incremental forever backups, the source plus changes means a lot to us. Because in theory, we're never really doing a first full backup, because even a first full backup on a device is still going to deduplicate any blocks that we've already got in storage. Okay? But source plus changes is 12.77 at source. Now, if I was using a traditional backup method, where I was taking full backups every single week, incremental backups during the week, and I was storing to disk and tape and whichever other methods that I was wanting to do, to be able to restore those 4,011 snapshots, I would need a total of 226 terabytes worth of disk and tape kicking around. We've spoken a lot about global deduplication and what that means to us. Within this system, I am only storing 4.28 terabytes worth of blocked data within the Phoenix system at the back end. That's a big, big difference to the amount of physical that potentially you would need to still be able to restore those 4,011 snapshots.
When I restore a snapshot, do I need to restore the entire snapshot, or can I restore portions of that?
Very good question. We have, so from a physical base, you can do all of the data that you've protected. You can drill right the way down and do individual files. Mm-hmm. From a VM perspective, we give you an option of either doing a disk-only based recovery, a full VMware recovery, or we provide file-level recovery as well from Hyper-V or VM.
Okay, thank you.
And we can look at a little bit of that if we've still got time at the end of this session. Okay. As we've explained, the Druva solution to an organisation is based on the amount of data that is stored at the back end. Okay. Works a little bit like a mobile phone top-up, if you'd like. So you pre-buy storage credits, and as you're consuming storage, those credits go down. You can then pre-buy and top up with more storage credits. Okay? That sort of understand?
You can use all, you can protect all the different kind of workloads. You can use any number of agents or any number.
Exactly. We don't charge you based on the amount of servers, the amount of VMs, the amount of processors, all of that other stuff that you tend to see out in pricing models today. We try and make life easy and just say, it's yours, go consume, and all we're going to do is charge you based on what it is that you're physically storing for us at the end of the day. Okay? In reality, it doesn't matter how long you are storing data for or retaining data for, because a snapshot of 7 years ago is just going to be differing blocks to the data that you've actually got protected today. Okay? And I sometimes try to explain how our storage works at a high level. If you think of the storage within a Druva system, it's basically a big bucket full of jigsaw puzzle pieces. Okay? Every single one of those jigsaw puzzle pieces is different. Okay? When I come to back up a file, I break that file down into jigsaw puzzle pieces and I look at it and I ask the bucket, does a piece like this already exist? And if it does already exist, I don't bother sending it across the wire. If it doesn't exist, I will throw it into the bucket, but outside and in a different location, I'm keeping a database that says for this particular server at this particular point in time, for this particular file, those are the particular jigsaw puzzle pieces I need to rebuild my file. Okay? In theory, that is allowing us to shard that data. So if someone was to break into your storage, all they would find is a great big bucket full of jigsaw puzzle pieces, but no actual photographs to try and work out what it is that they're building. Each of those jigsaw puzzle pieces are independently encrypted as well. Okay? So the security at the back end, from the way we've built the solution, not only makes us efficient, but also makes us very, very secure. Within here, if I look at credit balance, this gives you an understanding of what I was saying about the amount of storage and the credits coming down over time. So in theory, I've got 4 terabytes worth of storage. Every month, 4 credits will come off of my storage balance. Yeah? Until I get down to next to nothing, and I'm talking about Druva to increase the amount of storage credits that I'm using.
Martin, your chart there, your central dashboard,
yes,
it's very what I would class as infrastructure focused. So it talks a lot about servers, hardware, machines and so on.
Yes.
As customers are sort of moving away from being infrastructure focused in general and are looking at things like moving workloads to the cloud or using containers or doing other things, they're going to be looking for data protection to be much more application focused in terms of the way you visualize that data.
Yes.
So how can we do that today? Can we show lines of business and the applications they own and what their protected data is? Or is that something that you're working on for the future?
It's futures rather than today, in all honesty. This solution that we've got from a Phoenix perspective at the moment allows an organisation to break down to different departments or what we call organisations within the system. Whereas I'm in at God level here. In fact, I'll go in here instead. I have the ability to create additional organisations. I can create administrators at that organisation level and granular access so that certain administrators can see certain things. But as I say, at the moment, we aren't a do everything for everyone. This is very much focused on that sort of data set that we were discussing earlier as far as going.
And how would I tag an individual component as being related to an application? How would, for instance, say that I've got 1,000 SQL servers in my environment and 500 of them belong to one thing and 20 of them belong to another app. Can I use tagging within your environment to tag those belonging to a particular
So there's elements of tagging, and we've got tagging within the VM side of things to assist, not only for the automatic protection. We also have server groups. So we have an admin group concept and a server group concept, so that you can also, when deploying servers of a certain type within a certain tag, place them within a specific server group. So you then have visibility at a server group level as well.
Just as an observation, one last thing, and I'm going to take the presentation time up. It would be useful if you were doing that yourselves, because the chances are that you will outlive the actual platform the application sits on quite considerably. So people will be coming to you and looking back and saying, well, say 5 years ago, where was that application running? Was it on a server? Was it on a container? Was it in the cloud? Where was it? And you'll be the single point of truth in terms of where that data came from.
Absolutely, because
So
we've got the valid snapshot and know exactly what was.
But if you haven't got a record that ties that to an application somehow, that's you might as well just not have it.
Yeah.
That'd be a relevant thing in the future.
Can you make a note of that as well, Dave?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right,
Haven't doing anything
Get
else.
those notes down. Right, thank you.
As I say, so that was pretty much me looking at a global view. It gives you an understanding of whereabouts we are. I'm going to drill into the London data centre. I only have about 10 minutes, so you can soon eat something and stop listening to me going on and on and on. They are green, I am lucky. I didn't check before, but even if I had. So within the London data centre, if I was an admin that was set up for the London data centre at that level, when I logged into the system, this is what I would see. So I wouldn't see all of the information about my dedupe, I wouldn't see anything. I would get a history of my 90 days worth of storage over time. I do get to see how much data I am storing in each of the locations where I have data stored. Okay? Anything that is green there is a storage location that allows me to set up and store data because it's been enabled. Anything that's grey in there is a storage location that hasn't yet been set up for me, but I can request it very easily by speaking to support, saying, actually, I fancy storing some data in Sydney, please. Because it gives me an excuse to go on holiday and try and look for that data. Within London, I've got 1,232 snapshots available to me. Okay? And I can see the servers that I physically got. Now, there was a question earlier about VMware. I'm going to select my VMware machines, and I actually get the hypervisor that is running my vCenter environment. If I select, and I could have multiples, obviously. If I select that hypervisor, I am now able to see all of the machines that exist on that hypervisor, and I can see which ones I've configured for backup. Okay? As I explained, I've got this cloud cache machine that I haven't configured for backup, but I could very easily click the button, and I've just got 3 bits that I need to go through to actually start backing that machine up very, very easily. I need to select whereabouts I'm going to store the data, and that can be limited based on which storage the customers have enabled or how that administrator is logging in or what rights they have. The administrative group and the backup policy that is going to deal with the frequency and the retention for that particular server that I'm doing.
Can you have automatic selection maybe based on VMware tags?
Yes, indeed you can. I will show you that shortly as well. Okay, so here I've actually said I'm going to store the data in America. I'm not going to say yes to this. The EU NAS administrative group, I'm using my 25-year retention period, and it gives me an understanding of the policy that's been set for this, but if I wanted to create a brand new policy, I could do very, very easily.
Can I select a group of machines, so make a consistency group and make all, them consistent at a certain point in time?
So they all start backing up at exactly the same time?
Yes, so I want consistent snapshot for my VMs.
No, I don't believe you can against a group of machines currently, as far as I'm aware, but again, we'll make a note, feed that back, if that is something. I mean, I understand the whys, but I don't think you can specify exact start times. We tend to do within Windows, and it's...
No. I mean, so I need, VMs. Okay, so applications are organized into many VMs. I could have 30 VMs for a single application, and I need all of them synchronized at the same exact moment,
Yeah,
so that I can get a consistent, image of my application for recovery, but also for disaster recovery, since you mentioned in your website that you can have disaster recovery orchestration.
Indeed, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well before we disappear off. So the question is, I don't believe we do. We've got a note down. We'll go back to the product team and see what we're doing around that to be able to get that. I understand the concept there because the farm or whatever it is that you've got that service that one application needs to be protected in one lump, as opposed to 10-minute intervals between each of those servers.
Just if you have two databases in two different machines and they are, out of sync for 5 minutes, that could create a huge.
Yes, indeed. So I'm going to cancel out of this, but basically I go through those steps. Once I click go, it's all done. Automatic configuration allows me to create rules based on what's including, what's not, which backup pool, or which proxies within the pool are going to deal with the processing of those machines, and so on and so forth for automation. Physically going into those files, I was asked the question about recovery earlier. So if I went into a configured virtual machine and I look at a specific work file server that I've got here, I can see information about this server, how many snapshots are currently held and whereabouts those snapshots are. So I've got 3 in hot snapshots, and hot snapshots would be the cloud cache, that is the localized repository of blocks. 42 are within warm, S3, and 32 of those are older in cold. Okay. If I was to go and restore data, you'll see that I have my hot snapshots, my warm snapshots, my cold snapshots. If I was looking at a cold snapshot, I would need to, and apologies here again, defreeze that snapshot. If I had my way, it would just say thaw, but I find it as amusing as you do as well, and I love demonstrating these things. So defreezing, once they're defrozen, the data is exposed for you for 3 days to allow you to go off and get whatever data you want back out of that, and then we refreeze. I don't mind refreeze too much, it's just the defreeze.
That's just freeze break.
Indeed. But if I was, say, going back to a snapshot, I'll go back to one of my older snapshots here within this particular device, and I looked at the device as it was on April the 25th. I've selected that date. I now have the ability to look at disk recovery, full VM recovery, or file-based recovery. Okay? And if I was doing a file-based recovery, this can take a while, and I don't know how good the internet is in this room, but what we're basically doing now is getting the proxies on the machine to present the file structure. It hasn't taken too long at all to allow me to go into that device and start looking through at a file-based level. If I went to users and Martin and documents, and if I was to say go to legal, I could then go through and actually say I want to see my merger model and my merger plans.doc, and I can choose to restore at a file-based level out of that snapshot of the VM that was done back in April. But I get a choice to restore it to a CIF share or restore it to a VM. If I'm restoring it to a VM, I can choose the original VM, where I put in my user credentials for that VM, and I can then choose a location. It doesn't necessarily have to go back into the original location. I also have the ability to say I want to restore those 2 files to an alternate VM, and that alternate VM could be on a completely different host level. As long as I've got a proxy running there, I can then go through, navigate down and pop those files onto a completely different machine in a completely different environment. We also have the ability for larger organisations to utilise Snowball Edge, the ruggedised AWS kit. We are pre-built into those bits of kit. So if organisations have a large amount of data they want to ingest quickly, We can, through this system, just organise the delivery of a Snowball Edge device. The first backups can happen to that device. They ship it back to AWS. We keep on doing their incremental backups in the meantime because we know that data is going to come, and that way they don't have to use all of their internal bandwidth and time in getting that data uploaded. Later on this year we are also providing reverse seed, where organisations can restore back to the Snowball Edge and have it delivered back so that they've got their data back as well. Outside of that, if there's any other questions, or else I'm going to get smacked for going on too long, it's a habit of mine, but we are around over lunch if you want to get bored anymore by me.
Couple of questions.
No, completely active.
How do customers typically align with you when they're looking at how they build their DR policies? Because obviously this isn't necessarily DR.
No, we have a facility for anyone that is running VMware to be able to take a copy of their VMware that we've backed up and then transform that to an EBS snapshot within the customer's own AWS account. It sits there dormant until they want to invoke DR, but they can pre-select security groups and IP addresses and so on and so forth. And within a 20-minute period of invoking DR, that server, as per the backup that we've taken, will be up and running within their own AWS.
Okay, so I know you do that because you've got your own process for hacking the VM to make that work better than the AWS solution. But I was thinking more about when a customer comes to you and they architect using you as their solution, do they look at you as a solution for DR, or do they sort of try to align the two together, or
Yeah, we are working towards being far more robust from a DR-based perspective, and we are working heavily around making that far more available cloud-based. We have a lot of customers that are using us, but if you look back at the example earlier about huge groups of VMs and such like, we aren't there yet. We do have a lot of customers that are using it for their web server infrastructure, their file servers, because they want to make sure that that data, and bearing in mind, again, we're not talking necessarily about going and replacing an entire historic Commvault or whatever else, specific workloads that suit, and if you need a very quick DR-able version of your file servers and your web servers, then the DR as a service that we provide can offer that to you. But I wouldn't say we're going to be able to spin up your entire VM estate in the cloud within 20 minutes and it will all happily work. That's not where we are yet. But you've seen the steps that we've gone through in the developments that we've made recently, and that is still accelerating big style.